Wrapping it up with the mock. I like this. It's a way too early. Well, maybe not way too early. Devy 2022 mock. All those picks that you just started trading for because you're no longer a contender and you're looking to rebuild. These are the guys that you should be looking for. I think we had pretty good mock drafts in the past. Maybe just don't listen to Lounis, who picked Kyle Trask in the first round last year. Other than that, solid. Kicking it off.
To be fair to him, though, that was based off of that mock draft where Kyle Trask was projected to be the starting quarterback.
That's true.
He was projected to be the starter in Chicago.
It was just a segment. We were just
all right. I just like messing with Lounis because he doesn't normally get it.
But Lounis, you are going with a new quarterback here. You got a new number one.
Matt Corral, quarterback from Ole Miss, is the number one pick. I just feel like, one, he's the safest. I feel the best about. Like, I know people may argue he may not have like as high as rushing upside as some other QBs, but he's the guy I feel most confident about in terms of being a long-time starter in the NFL. He's going to be the first quarterback drafted in this draft class. In the Superflex league, I just feel like it's like the safest and best pick to go with.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be much disagreement here.
His rushing production is pretty good too, especially when you compare him to some of the other top quarterbacks that have come out in recent years. Like, he's definitely at the he's not the craziest runner. He's not like Kyler Murray or anything, but I mean, I'm pretty sure he was leading the SEC in touchdowns for a little bit. He's still probably near the top. He's got a good arm. Yeah, I agree. Good number one pick here in Matt Corral.
Yeah, rolling into pick 2 was me. I took the RB1 in this draft class. It's Breece Hall from Iowa State. He's just an absolute monster. He does everything, and he's going to be a productive bell cow for an NFL team moving forward. And I can't wait to see what he does, honestly.
Yeah, I was pretty upset you took him there. I mean, I wanted him. I agree. Bell cow. These running backs do kind of more profile as bell cow running backs than last year's, specifically, ETN, and even in my opinion, somewhat Najee. But I mean, we've seen Najee be a bell cow currently, so who knows?
Wait, real quick. I think the biggest thing that you like to see about Breece Hall is that his receiving production has increased every year, it seems like. He had 23 catches in 2019 and 2020 as a freshman and a sophomore. And then this year, through 10 games, 2 less than those previous years, he already has 31 catches. So he could easily get up to 35, 40 catches. And that's pretty damn good for a college running back, a guy that's like 6'2", 220. Like, he is really looking like a prototypical RB1 that can produce early.
Well, speaking of those,
he's going to be a workhorse.
Yeah, speaking of those kind of running backs, I'll just follow it up with my running back 2 on the board, pick 3 overall. That's Isaiah Spiller, running back from Texas A&M. He also has, I think, 25 receptions on the season. He's shown that he can catch the ball, not too much, but like he's definitely capable of it. He has 914 yards on the year, but what I really like is 6'1", 215, another bell cow kind of running back prototype, if you will. To me, these are the clear-cut 2 running backs. That's kind of why I'm willing to pay up more for these guys, because I like them much more, and I think this is where the tier break is compared to, I think Matt Corral is the clear quarterback 1, and then after that, there's a tier break, and then there's a bunch of guys below that, at least until the draft decides. So I decide with the 3rd pick, I'd rather just pay up and get the second running back in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, if you look early in the draft, throughout the entire 20 picks that we did for this mock, there's a lot of very prototypical size for these positions that you would want. So I had back-to-back 4 and 5. We snaked it. And I was kind of choosing between 4 players. And the 4 players were Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, David Bell, and Kenneth Walker. I think that those were the guys. And I guess you could throw Pickens in there. I didn't want to take Pickens just because of the injury and the uncertainty, I guess. I decided to go with Treylon Burks at 4 and then Garrett Wilson at 5. A little bit because if I were drafting today, I think that these are 2 very safe prospects. I think that they're pretty surefire first round caliber receivers. Not necessarily saying that they will go first round, but a little bit of that is dictated by what the teams need. I think there's a very good chance they both do, though. And they just check a lot of the boxes. Treylon Burks to me is like a kind of like an Amari Cooper. And then Garrett Wilson is just, dude, you watch the guy play and he is dicing people up all game. His routes are phenomenal.
He kind of reminds me of Calvin Ridley.
Yes, he does. He has really polished route running and good feet. So, like, even though I'm not a huge proponent of drafting receivers high in rookie drafts, like, dude, these two guys at this part in the process, I think are really safe. And if I was drafting today, I'd be pretty happy about landing them at 4 and 5.
Is there ever a scenario where you put Garrett Wilson above Treylon Burks, or is Treylon Burks your clear cut?
Yeah, I haven't really ground the film on it. I think that David Bell is pretty damn close. And then Kenneth Walker, right? I think that Kenneth Walker, if he gets good draft capital and checks a lot of the boxes, like just because he has that running back and if he's a decent receiver at all, like, and he gets a good landing spot, dude, he can easily shoot up even past Isaiah Spiller or Breece Hall. Because, like, dude, there's going to be a huge push on these running backs and quarterbacks as the season progresses. It happens every year.
All right, I'm back on the clock, and like Frank just alluded to, I picked David Bell. He's finally starting to get more hype, and the hype that I think he deserves. It only took him torching both Michigan State and Ohio State.
I feel like every time I check a Purdue game, I just look at some of the final stats, and it's like David Bell, like 12 catches, 217 yards. I'm just like, holy shit.
Yeah, well, what's crazy is he's been doing this for 3 years now, like against strong opponents. Like I think his first breakout game was against Minnesota, but then he also did against Iowa. He's done against Iowa like every year. He's just destroyed Iowa. What's interesting is he plays for Purdue. And while I would have loved to see him and Rondale Moore playing together and see what like they could have done together, due to injuries and whatnot, they didn't really ever play on the field a whole lot at the same time. So I don't know. But to me, David Bell
was kind of trash.
Yeah, quarterback also trash.
That doesn't help.
Yeah, but I wish we had WWE type intros, because right now there'd be my intro music in the pop, because Tinder Girl JT is back. David Bell, 6'2", 205. He's just the prototypical alpha kind of wide receiver. David Bell, to me, I do have him above Garrett Wilson currently. He's my wide receiver 2, right behind Treylon Burks. But, I mean, to me, with the top 4 wide receivers, I don't think you could go wrong.
I mean, fact of the matter is that if you're landing any one of these 3 at picks 6, 7, 8, which is a very realistic chance that one of them will be on the board at those picks, like, that is nice. That feels really good.
Yeah, it's the constant wide receivers kind of get slept on in the draft, because I'm sure there's going to be some quarterbacks that we mentioned soon that are going to go higher than these.
If Sam Howell goes top 10 in the draft, I mean, you can only imagine what that does to his draft stock.
I feel like he's going to be the guy that, like, Tao's going to be the guy that, like, just rises the most, like, post after, like, the regular season. Like, how people, like, for example, last college season, I feel like everyone had Justin Fields as QB2, but then, like, kind of during, like, the pre-draft process and everything, Zach Wilson rose and Trey Lance rose. I feel like Howell's going to be that guy that rises a lot.
Well, Jake, who's your pick at 7?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you guys should just talk about him for me, because at pick 7, I did go with Sam Howell. I mean, he's just a prototypical quarterback here. He's 6'2", 220, has the big arm. I mean, we saw him produce big time last year when he had the likes of Diami Brown and Daz Newsome at wide receiver here. And Javonte Williams behind him. Obviously, that's a very, very good offense at UNC, and he struggled a little bit this year without those guys. But that's just what happens when you lose pretty much your entire starting offense and you stick around. But I expect him to go in the top 10 of the draft, and at that point, taking a top 10 overall pick in the NFL draft at pick 7, especially at the quarterback position, I think it's a great pick here.
Yeah. Take a shot for every time we say the word prototypical.
And another thing to touch, I've said this before with picking quarterbacks early in rookie drafts, is that if it doesn't pan out, you
can
always
always flip
have the forgivers. If you turn around and Sam Howell has a very iffy, very interception prone rookie year, and you go, I'm out. You could always find someone that'll be like, oh yeah, I'm a contender. I'll take him for a late first round pick, or I'll give you, an older quarterback in a second. Like you could always
Every
flip
year.
them around just because quarterbacks maintain that value in Superflex leagues so much.
It's apology season.
Look at I mean, it's not even I mean, it could just be like, for example, look at Zach Wilson has 4 touchdowns to 9 picks this year, and he still has a ton of value, and for a good reason, because he's extremely talented. I mean, I know. Listen, I still like Zach Wilson too. He's talented, but I just mean to say, like, they don't have to do well their rookie year, and people are still going to believe in the talent. So I'm with you, Jake, and I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought you had just said how. My bad. What is it? So number 8, I went with Kenneth Walker. He's my RB3 behind the guys I went earlier, Hall and Spiller. He's just every single game against any kind of defense, he just makes plays. He just completely made a joke out of the Michigan defense, as he has with defenses all year. He's a machine at breaking tackles. I think this year he started to show his receiving abilities a little bit more. I don't know how common this has been used as a player comp, but he reminds me a bit of David Montgomery. I guess just more like the ridiculous number of broken tackles was like the thing that kind of made me think of Montgomery, because that was his biggest thing coming out of college too, how many tackles he broke on a consistent basis. As the same thing with Kenneth Walker, and I think he's going to be someone who's a starting running back once they go into the NFL, maybe if not week 1, then extremely soon. Well worth the top 10 pick, top 8, and I mean, at 108 getting Kenneth Walker, I think is really good value. It goes to show the late first round this year is kind of loaded. At 109, I went Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty. I feel like he's kind of like the ultimate wild card at quarterback in this draft class. Like right now, you could tell me he ended up going number like 10 overall, and you could tell me he went like early mid second round, and of like the real draft, and neither I'd be surprised at. It's going to come down to how like a lot of these teams think he can switch over to the NFL level. He didn't play well against Ole Miss. But to be fair to him, neither did his O-line. And I think part of what kind of brings him this high in fantasy is that rushing upside that he offers. He has the most rushing upside out of any of those top QBs this draft class, where if he is a starter on a team, he's going to get you points just off of that. Jake, were you about to say something?
I was just going to say that, like, all of these quarterbacks, whether it's Corral, Howell, Willis, a few of the guys that we'll touch on coming up in a minute, but quarterbacks are one of those positions that their draft position in a rookie draft is heavily influenced by their draft capital in the NFL draft. Just because, JT's run the numbers. He said if you're not a top 15 pick at quarterback, like the percentage that you're a franchise quarterback is just very low. It's just, and that's just something you got to factor in when evaluating these quarterbacks here, because more teams are more likely to move on quick if they put less draft capital into them.
And I mean, I'll say now, if Malik Willis goes top 15, top 12 in the real NFL draft, he's not going to be available.
He's going to be a top 5 pick, guaranteed.
He's a top 5 pick, 1,000%.
Yeah, I passed on him. I passed on him because I don't believe he's going to be a first round pick. But like you said, if he's even if he's in the first round, I don't even think he needs to be a top 15 pick. If he's in the first round, he's going to get hyped because, like you said, his rushing ability. No one's going to deny the fact that this dude is absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. Like, I do think, I've said it before, I do think he is on that Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray-esque tier of running ability.
And if he gets drafted in the late first, that's equivalent to Lamar. They're going to have those kind of comparisons. He'll end up getting pumped up.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Lake.
Oh, I am up again. And I took a guy that I actually have as my wide receiver 2 in this class. And I got him all the way down here at pick 10. That's George Pickens. The big thing with George Pickens is obviously he has not played a game this year. He's coming off an ACL injury. But prior to that, he's been one of the most dominant receivers in college football for the past 2 seasons. As a true freshman, as a sophomore at Georgia, he's been incredible. I think he's just kind of playing... we've seen players come back from the ACL injury. It's not anything too crazy nowadays with today's medicine. And I think he's kind of milking it. I do think if he could come back if he really wanted to. I'm going to be honest. I think he's milking it. I'm going to be honest. I think he could play. I think he's kind of taking a page
Jake
out
questions Pickens' toughness.
No, I think he's taking a page
I mean, that's it out too.
I think he's taking a page out of the Jamar Chase book here and saying, hey, I already have my draft capital. I've been proven I'm a dominant wide receiver. I fit the build. I'm 6'2", 190. Like, I'm a big guy. I'm just going to take this year to finish my rehab and prepare for the NFL draft.
But I think that's the main concern that I have with Pickens is I want to see the NFL teams draft him high, just because we haven't seen him, right? Like, if he goes high in the draft around these other top receivers, then I'll consider him at like that 4 to 5 picks I was at. But I think that's really good value at pick 10 for you if this were an actual draft.
Yeah.
And
I
we
don't
can all
think-
agree that there's arbitrage value right now. If the NFL draft capital matches everything and he declares and everything goes right, that Pickens is probably going to be going earlier than 10. Or if he's around 10, you're like, fuck yeah, bro. Like, I'm chilling.
My issues with Pickens are I think people have overrated how much he's dominated. He hasn't dominated as much in the stats sense as the likes of Treylon Burks and David Bell. And what my pick that I guess I'll just move on to right now was doing this year, Drake London, who I have ranked above Pickens. Then my other
He's
reason,
the wide receiver at a USC.
yeah, wide receiver at USC. I'll get into him in a second. But my thing is with Pickens is I'm thinking he stays another year. I just think I think he's going to go into the 2023 class. I don't agree with it either, Jake. I think it's going to hurt him like it hurt another receiver that's going to be talked about in a later part of this draft. I just think if you're draft eligible, you should go. Like if you think you're getting drafted in the first 2 days, first 3 rounds, you should go. And to me, I don't think George Pickens is, so I'm just keeping him.
You don't
low
think
for
he's
now.
going to be a first 2-day pick?
No, I think if he ends up going, he probably will be, but I don't think he will go. That's what I'm saying. Like I think he should go if he's going to be a first 2-day pick. But for some reason, like one of the players we're going to talk about later, they just don't go, and that really hurts their value to me. So moving on though, like I just alluded to, Drake London, receiver, USC. He played with Michael Pittman in his freshman year. He was pretty solid. He's tall. He's big. He's 6'5", 205, I think, 210. I don't know. I could pull it up.
Red zone monster.
6'5", 210, red zone monster. I think I saw from what I noticed and watching him on film, he always lined up on like the left side of the field. I don't know if that's like true. That might just be me doing fake facts here, but that's something interesting that I saw that like I didn't really understand why and wish I got more in-depth reasoning to that. To me, he's my wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. He's close neck and neck with Garrett Wilson. I just think we hadn't seen someone dominate his share of targets, like his team share of targets, like we have with Drake London this year. Drake London had, looking at his stats, 88 receptions before he just destroyed his ankle, and that's going to be the issue. He destroyed his ankle. It was like a Dak-esque injury. I don't think it was as bad, but he is going to have to rehab it. He is going to have to come back from it. He probably won't be testing for the combine and whatnot. I still think he'll be a first 2-round draft pick. And to me, that's enough to keep him up there. So Drake London, what am I, pick 11?
Yeah.
12. Yeah, pick 11. Drake London, pick 11. I really like the value there.
I've said it before. He reminds me of Mike Evans just a lot.
I mean, dude, like you're looking through. So my pick 12, I took Kyron Williams, the running back out of Notre Dame, mainly just because I think I have him around in the conversation of these other top backs. So getting him at pick 12 just felt like too good to pass up. And then I took one of my personally favorite quarterbacks in the draft, Carson Strong, at 13. But this just goes to show you before we even get, like, we can even take just the top 12 picks. This first round is good, right? And especially when you start putting faces and names to the picks, like there's a lot of upside in all 12, 13 of these players. And there's still guys that we're going to go into that also have a ton of upside and a ton of potential. So the whole 2022 class sucking ass, I don't know. It's starting out. This is looking pretty freaking good.
I think what people say when they mean that is they don't have, the Jamar Chase, the Kyle Pitts. Like, they don't have that super, super top end, players that everyone wants and everyone thinks are just can't miss players. Because, obviously we all looking at, Breece Hall, Isaiah Spiller, Treylon Burks, even Matt Corral to an extent. And we go, yeah, they're the best players in this draft. But then if you go and you put them back in next year's class, where do they – or last year's class with those other guys, with Trevor Lawrence and the other guys I mentioned, like, where do they rank among them? And I think that's where you start to get the bad draft class label here.
Yeah, but the problem with that, though, is that seems to have stemmed mainly to the late 2022 first-round picks. More so, like, if you have an early first-round pick, you're never just like, oh, this sucks, I'm going to throw it in the trash. Like, I feel like the people that took the bait on that, it's because they were a contender and they're saying to themselves, oh, this isn't a great draft class. My pick 110, 111 is not going to be as good as last year, so I'd rather trade it away. Not saying that you automatically lost the trade. It's just, dude, I'm looking, there's 14, 15 players that I could see myself taking with a first-round pick. As of right now, obviously the draft and everything is going to change things, but there's a lot of players.
I think the later half is better than most people believe, at least in its current form. I don't know what the NFL draft and everything will change about it, but to me, it just doesn't compare to 2020 and 2021, which is what hurts it. And then it has 2023 behind it, which everyone is hyping up as well. But if you take 2022 and you compare it to most other years, I think it's on par. Like, I think it's a fine draft class. It's not a bad draft class. But when you're comparing it to the two before and the one after that, allegedly what we're going to get, that's where it kind of falls short. And that's where the perceived value drops.
No, this is why I was saying a couple episodes ago that I wanted to go out there and start collecting the second round picks, because the more people start looking into the class and the more people like us, other podcasts, there's thousands of them, are going to start doing 2022 mock drafts, especially with the trade deadlines coming up and people starting to gear content towards rebuilding teams. Like, dude, the cat's going to be out of the bag that this is a pretty damn good second round and late first round. And these picks that may have been undervalued, you're going to see their keep trade cuts value increase, the consensus value increase, the perceived value is going to increase. And this is exactly around the time where these picks start gaining a lot of value. And once you start wanting a guy like a Chris Olave, oh, dude, I want to get him in the mid-second round. Well, everyone wants him in the mid-second round except for JT. But you get the fucking point.
Yeah. He's a Blitnikoff finalist, actually, came out, which I completely disagree.
Who is the Blitnikoff finalist this year?
I don't know. There's like
Jameson Williams is one.
Drake London's up there. I don't think David Bell made it onto there. I could look again, but
that's crazy if you did.
Yeah. It's a fake award. I don't know. Jamar Chase.
Yeah, awards don't matter. If you're drafting based off of awards, just choose any other stat.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. So, Frank, did you have anything to add about?
No, we've talked about Kyren Williams and Carson Strong on previous podcasts.
Yeah. Okay. So I pick 14. I'm taking Zach Charbonnet. I think that's how you pronounce it. I always try. I don't know if I ever get it right.
Charbonnet?
Probably not that. Running back, UCLA. I don't know. To me, normally I'm not one of those guys that is for players that, didn't produce in their first 2 years and didn't really do anything. And that's kind of what we saw from Zach Charbonnet. But I'm enacting this rule that I started this year, and it's the Michigan rule. And it's just any prospect that goes to Michigan. It's the Adam Gase effect, but for college. Just anything that happens in Michigan doesn't count.
What happens in Michigan stays in Michigan.
Yeah. Not that Donovan
get drafted by the Lions.
Well, you can kind of guess how that's going to go.
I don't know. That's a future JT issue. They only have a certain amount of picks. And not that Donovan People-Jones is like a world beater or anything, but he was trashed so hard, and then he came out and like he's fine and everything. Like Nico Collins, I still like, but Zach Charbonnet transferred from. He was a highly touted high school prospect. I think either 4-star or 5-star. Went to Michigan, didn't really do a whole lot. Got stuck in the depth chart, then transferred to UCLA. And at least at the start of his season, he was looking really good. I mean, he's kind of fallen off a little bit, the past 3 or so weeks that he's played. But he's still someone that I think has that prototypical size. He is 6'1", 220. I just think I don't know what happened there, Frank. Oh, prototypical size, yes.
That's another one.
Power hour. 6'1", 220. The 3rd and 20 power hour. 6'1", 220, Zach Charbonnet. I like him more than Kenneth Walker. I'm pretty sure that at this point that's a hot take. He's my running back 3 in this class. As long as he's a top 3 pick, which is not guaranteed, not top 3 pick, a top 3 round pick. Yeah, first 3 rounds. I'd be scooping him up.
Nice. So that means you have him over Kyron Williams too.
I'm low on Kyron Williams.
I don't know. I like Charbonnet. I wouldn't take him in the early second. I think that I'd rather go for one of the other receivers. But like you said, if he gets a 2nd round pick to his name, and with the highly touted recruit and the fact that he's showing up, like he's going to get hyped and he'll go around.
I'm kind of in between you two. I would take him in the early second, but he is my RB5.
I spilt water all over me. I'm not happy.
It's the prototypical size that did that.
This power hour is getting to me.
Speaking of prototypical size, the guy I took at 15 is 6'4", 215 at the quarterback position. Big arm, plays for a top 5 team in college football right now. That's Desmond Ridder of Cincinnati.
Solo Bengals?
Sell all Bengals. No, buy all Bengals. Sell all Ravens. But anyways, he's a quarterback that I think has a big arm. He provides a rushing floor similar to Malik Willis, where he'll put up some touchdowns and some rushing yards that'll really help his fantasy points. Overall, he's another guy that I think is going to sneak into the first round of the NFL draft. I'm a big Desmond Ridder believer. I know he fell to QB5 in this draft, which I have him at QB3 behind Corral and Howell. So at pick 15 here, I think it's pretty much a steal for me, honestly.
I like him. Again, it's the same thing with all these quarterbacks. Where they end up getting drafted and leading up to the draft is going to be such kind of the ultimate deciding factor on where a lot of these guys go. But I'm a fan of Desmond Ridder. I know a lot of people are low on him just because he's in the American Conference.
Yeah, that's the big knock on him. Is he doesn't play anybody. That's the big knock on him. But
he did beat Notre Dame.
I'm taking the JT stance here. I want to see the NFL buy into him. I haven't seen anything out of Ridder in particular that I'm willing to start shelling out relevant draft capital to pick him up against the NFL, against the grain.
Obviously, I said it earlier. The draft capital for quarterbacks is the most important thing that goes into this. Because if he falls to a 3rd round pick, obviously he's not being taken at pick 15 overall. It's just what it is.
Remember when Spencer Rattler would have been here?
Spencer Rattler would have been top 1 overall. Yeah.
Things change. All right, go ahead, Lounis.
So at pick 6, I'm taking Chris Olave from Ohio State. I know JT automatically hates him because he's a senior.
He's a wide receiver, by the way.
Well, did that not say wide receiver?
No, you did not.
Oh, my fault. He's a wide receiver. But I will, to JT's point, he was producing in his first 2 years of college. Especially his sophomore season was when he kind of really broke out. He would have been, where was he projected to go last year? He would have been kind of a 2nd round pick receiver? Not in fantasy drafts, like in the NFL draft.
Well, yeah. Conspiracy JT thinks that the reason he stayed behind was because he probably wouldn't have been a first 2 round pick. And his agent probably told him, you should stay another year, play out.
I think he was getting Rondell Moore-esque buzz, though. Maybe a little bit less.
I feel around the second.
All right, mid second. I mean, maybe he was trying.
I think
to
more so like late second. If we're gonna combine, like around like Dwayne Eskridge and Tutu Atwell, I think he's definitely going somewhere around there.
Yeah, I thought above those guys, but even though he's here as a senior, he's playing cross-side Wilson. Obviously, Wilson we're all a little bit higher on, but I still really like him. I think he kind of reminds me of like a actually healthy Will Fuller. I think he's going to be someone that teams can draft as a deep threat, a vertical target, and he still looked really good his senior year. Obviously, the quarterback this year. What were you going to say, JT?
That's where I gotta disagree with you, Lounis, and that's where I'm.
You don't think he's looked good this year?
He's the third wide receiver on the team now. He hasn't been able to hold off Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yes, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and the other problem with him too is that you just haven't really had that real season of dominance from Olave. You know, he's had a bunch of like okay seasons. You know, sophomore year, 13 games, he puts up 840 yards and 12 touchdowns. Like, okay, that's good. Junior year, okay, COVID, he was phenomenal last year. I'll give him that, right? 7 games, 729 yards, 7 touchdowns. But then this year, he's not really following it up at all. So it's like kind of bringing it back, baby, bringing this back, the roller coaster performances, and it just gets a little bit nerve wracking.
I'm still a believer in him. I think I don't know. He's just shown too much to me over the past couple of years. And is this going to be another McLaurin situation?
At pick 16 or around this general part of the draft, I agree with you. I think it's worth the pick. But I think your next pick is actually the steal of the draft. And I'm kind of mad that you picked him up.
When I was looking at them, I kind of wanted to flip them, but they were back-to-back anyway. Jameson Williams has been just like a stud. I feel like wasn't Mechie kind of what people expected to be the wide receiver one this year?
Yeah, Jameson Williams, a wide receiver out of Alabama.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have said that at the beginning. I feel like coming into the year, people expected Mechie to kind of like step up and be that number, but Jameson Williams has looked a million times better than him. He's just been dominant. One of those finalists for the award. I'll sound smart. Prototypical wide receiver size.
Yes, he's a transfer from Ohio State. You know, he didn't get a ton of playing time at Ohio State. So transfers to Alabama, and now in his junior season has absolutely exploded. He's got in 10 games 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. One of the best receivers right now in college football. And
just I don't know if you guys watched the Bama LSU game the other week, but he just completely dominated. He had 10 for 160 and a touchdown against LSU. And I'm pretty sure. And then just the past couple weeks, he's even been helping his draft stock even more. I think even last weekend, I think he had an insanely good game, like 180 yards.
I think there's a good chance we start talking about him in the conversation with the other top receivers.
I was going to say, I think by the time like the draft buzz really starts coming up, he's going to be a late first round pick in these fantasy drafts.
Yeah.
These guys will switch up and down, but I think he's going to test really well. I think he's going to continue to play well for the rest of the season, especially if Bama gets into that Final Four and he has a chance to show out against some of like the really top tier teams. That's just going to only help him more, kind of like what happened with Devontae Smith last year. Obviously, I don't think he's on that high level, but I mean, pro ceiling, actually, you never know. But I'm a huge fan of him.
Rolling into the next pick, 18 overall. That was me again. Yes. I took a very interesting prospect in Wan'Dale Robinson, receiver from Kentucky. He's a transfer from Nebraska, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he was really a running back at Nebraska almost. And, you know, he's really switched over to wide receiver full-time here at Kentucky. And he's really produced in that role for a pretty surprising Kentucky football team here. He's had a lot of big plays and a lot of explosive plays, and I think he's just a piece that fits in an NFL offense as that, you know, deep threat, big play wide receiver, can hand him an end around or do some funky things with him out of the backfield just because he does have that experience as pretty much a running back. I think he had 80 carries at Nebraska his sophomore season. His freshman year at Nebraska, he had 88 rushing attempts. So he has a lot of experience at a bunch of different positions here, and I think he's just a guy that NFL teams are going to get creative with, and it's an interesting pick late in the second round here.
Yeah, I like Wan'Dale Robinson. Originally, I had him higher. I switched him out for Zach Charbonnet. So you kind of jumped me here. I think for me, he's actually my wide receiver 5 in this draft, behind, the Burks, Bell, Wilson, London. I think I have Wan'Dale Robinson currently as wide receiver 5. Yeah,
he's been incredibly productive.
Yeah, he's got really good yards per route run, which is I think a pretty good predictive stat. So it's intriguing. To me, I have someone, just kind of at the end of this draft, who I was willing to take a shot on, and that's Justin Ross.
He's one of my favorite picks in this mock.
Yeah, it's a weird one, right? Because what's his injury? He's dealing with he has
a back injury.
Back injury.
Spine injury kind of thing,
which was potentially career threatening, and it's something that probably has knocked a lot of scouts away from him, I think. But if he manages to get into the top 3 rounds, I really like Justin Ross. Obviously had Trevor Lawrence as his quarterback. He's out of Clemson. I don't know if I mentioned that, but in his freshman season, he had 1,000 yards receiving, which is very rare for any college prospect.
He was arguably one of Trevor Lawrence's top options there. Even with T. Higgins and all those.
When he was a freshman, I was gonna say when he was a freshman, I thought he was kind of better than Higgins when he was just coming in as a freshman. It's the yardage that we're saying isn't even just a result of playing with Trevor Lawrence and a cross-eyed Higgins. I remember the national championship, he was mossing every Alabama corner. He was just out jumping them, out playing them to the ball. It's just his health is now the ultimate question.
Yeah, it just sucks that he's been a part of this abysmal Clemson offense this year.
This season's looked pretty bad. This season, he hasn't really done a whole lot. I don't think he's had more than 5 catches this year. But to be fair, this whole Clemson offense in its entirety looks pretty terrible.
Yeah, if anyone's going to get a pass for being on a terrible team, I mean, Justin Ross might be the guy. So there's so many factors that you're right. He's a good prospect, and all of these concerns are going to be priced in by the Dynasty community and by the NFL. I really don't think that we're going to see an NFL team, barring anything pretty crazy, take a shot on Justin Ross. Honestly, I don't think in the first 2 days. I think he's going to be a day 3 pick. Maybe round 3, someone in that comp pick or in the middle decides to take a shot on him, or he just starts balling out in the combine and all that shit. I feel like I've seen NFL teams fade good players for less.
Yeah.
It's going to come down to when he goes into practice with a lot of teams, whether their medical team clears him.
Maybe he has to go to the. If he got that medical excuse, does he get to be invited to the Senior Bowl or something? Maybe something like that could help him. One of those bowl kind of stuff.
I think his draft stock's going to be dependent on when teams bring him in and their medical team checks him out, and then they have their own evaluation on it.
Yeah,
it kind of reminds me. I know this is a different sport. Do you guys remember in the NBA draft, Michael Porter Jr. a couple years ago?
His back issues.
Yeah, he was someone who's viewed as a top 3 talent, and half the teams in the NBA medical staff didn't clear him, and then half, or I guess maybe even less, a third did. So people had no idea where he was going to end up getting drafted.
Where'd he end up getting drafted?
He's a top 2 talent. He went 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he still went first round, but
not to pile on.
Yeah, he's also different, but yeah.
Yeah. Justin Ross is also he's out for I think the remainder of the season. And
he has a fractured foot or something.
Yeah. So who knows when he'll be healthy and ready to go?
It's just a lot of injury. It's a lot of injury concerns on one player.
It could be. Why am I blanking on his name right now?
He was so good as a freshman.
Plays for the Ravens,
doubt, but
not Rashad Bateman, who just got Tylan Wallace. It could be the Tylan Wallace scenario, where it's just health concerns kind of override production.
All right, I'll end the mock here. I am pick 20, last pick of this mock. I am taking Jahan Dotson, the wide receiver out of Penn State. This is definitely one of the players. I mentioned this in the same podcast where I said to buy the early seconds. I'm pretty sure that Jahan Dotson is one of these guys that I want to target in the second round. I think that he is an NFL-ready prospect. He's not the flashiest player in the world, but to me, he's what makes the Penn State offense go. He's a really good deep threat, and I think he's all right underneath. There's a few things he needs to improve upon, but to me, I think that he's an NFL-ready receiver. He's not going to be the flashiest dude, but dude, second-round value pick, I love it.
The back, even the middle, like pick 18 through 20, even our last.
There's value everywhere.
There's a lot of value in the middle. Even there's a few guys that didn't get drafted here. We have the likes of Kenny Pickett, quarterback from Pitt. There's a few other guys that come to mind, but this second round looks pretty juicy, man.
Yeah, and that's not even yet with some of the other running backs that are going to start getting hyped as the season progresses. It always happens where you have the random running backs start crawling out of the holes that they've come from and start getting hyped.
I think CJ Verdell's another guy from Oregon. I think he's got injured and he's going to miss the rest of the year, but he was very good for a very productive Oregon team.
Yeah, like a Mo Ibrahim even too. You never know if he ends up getting drafted somewhere juicy.
I was going to say, we saw it with Trey Sermon, whereas he just like the very end of the season, he just went like ape shit, and then his stock rose like crazy.
There's a lot of places where if a running back got drafted in the NFL, we'd instantly see him shoot up, like the Dolphins and Falcons stuff.
Yeah, like Zamir White is another guy. Yeah. Where could he go? Brian Robinson. Where could he go? I mean, we've seen it, especially from these big SEC teams like the Alabama mainly, where, dude, like they'll have one of their middle tier meddling running backs get drafted like 4th, 5th round, and they end up kind of being relevant, right? Like, if there's any team that's going to happen from, it's going to be one of these big teams.
Early.